Hi, welcome to my page. I'm Hope Allen, and I'm also known as the Drake Neck. On this page, you're going to learn everything there is to know about trucking and logistics and supply chain and technology and drayage services and dispatch services. We're going to talk about it all. I have been in the business now since 2014, and I can tell you that logistics and supply chain is one of those things that is near and dear to my heart. It works so well with my personality as far as fixing problems. And as you know, in the world of logistics and supply chain, there's always a problem. So come with me and follow me on my journey in the business. I hope some of these videos will help you on your way in trucking and logistics, whether you're just getting started or you've been in the business for a while. I'm going to try to do a lot of tutorials on how to, do this, how to scale your business, how to get certifications, how to quote your rates, how to understand the market. When there are disruptions in supply chain, I'll get on here and talk about it from my perspective and my opinion, from, just being in the business thus far. But let's go back. Let's talk about who I am. How did I get started in the business? And what my plans are moving forward. So YouTube is going to provide me that outlet that I can talk genuinely. A lot of you all may have seen me already on quite a few podcasts and outlets there where I was, in the box. But I don't know if I can cuss yet on YouTube, so I'm going to do my first few videos without cussing. But my next couple videos, I'm probably going to cut up a little bit once I really figure out what the requirements are for YouTube. I may have to kind of keep it in the box just a little bit, right? But my background in supply chain, logistics, and trucking started in big box retail. I took on a role after leaving law enforcement of 7 years into a warehousing job. I actually started off as an inbound office coordinator, basically working in the office, being responsible for the paperwork when the drivers would deliver the loads to the facility. Part of my role was to make sure that the units that came in on the truck matched the purchase orders in the system and that the units were received into the building accurately. I did that for about a year and a half in direct fulfillment, and then moved into another role, promoted into another role of transportation coordinator, vendor compliance on the floor. In that role, in big box retail, I was responsible for ensuring that the vendors' packaging came into the building accurately, meaning the corrugate, like, when you go to pick the orders, it didn't crumple, it didn't break down. The SKU labels were facing a certain way on the box so that when it came time for the picking team, they could quickly pick the items out of the locations. If we had kitting sets, like shower kitting sets, if they were packaged properly, to be able to store properly in the racking and everything so that it was no breakdown there. And then also the EDI portion of it, meaning when the electronic information for that product came into the building, making sure that the numbers match, the unit numbers match the SKUs and the purchase order number, and everything was clear for that truck. So I did that for about a year and a half, and then I took maternity leave. I birthed twins, and so on my maternity leave, I was just like, I love working my job. Didn't want to leave my job at all. My job was so great to me. However, I did not want to go back on the floor. So, I was just like, oh God, I got to go back to warehousing, go back to the floor. I don't know if I really want to do that. But, I prayed about it. I went back to work. I went back with a grateful heart, got back to work, and on the floor, in the office, just kind of doing a slew of different things there, right? And so, have it, probably about 4 weeks after I got back, I was approached by a manager saying, hey, we've created this position. We have you in mind for it, and we want to know if you'll be interested. And I said, well, what is the role? And they said transportation supervisor. And I was like, well, I've been wanting a supervisor role anyway, I want to make some money, I want to make some more money, right? Because I was hourly at the time. And so, they explained the role. I interviewed for it. And I was just like, oh God, this is a lot. You know, this is going to jump me to the next level, right? So, you know, when you in warehousing roles, especially hourly roles, right, you always want more responsibility. Well, you want more money with less responsibility, right? That's what, you know. So when I got promoted, you know, it came with more money, of course, additional increase in my salary, but it also came with a lot more responsibility. I actually promoted probably about, you know, 60 days out before what's considered peak season in supply chain and logistics. So I actually promoted around about September, right? So here it is. I have this big learning curve. I've been promoted to transportation supervisor. I do have a transportation manager at the time, and he was so great, right? He was super smart. He's been in logistics now probably about 35 years at this time. When I got promoted, he probably had been in transportation since he was like 19. He was like 40 something, right? So he was this guru, and I just felt so intimidated. I thought I knew everything before I got on that side of the building, because it was on the other side of the building. And he was just like a wealth of knowledge. So once he started training me, you know, I kind of got acclimated with a lot more terms and processes and procedures, and boom, my manager gets terminated. And it's not funny, but he gets terminated literally like 22 days out before peak. And I freak out, because this is not like a regular peak. This is a peak for the first piloted direct fulfillment center for this type of organization that I'm working for. It's the first building. This is only the second peak that we've had. And there's almost 80 some carriers that's onboarded at the time. We have small parcel, we have LTL, we have full truckload, and then we have inbound side, and we have an additional twin sister building with bulk products, right? And so now he's gone. Guess who that leaves to run everything? And I've only been enrolled, you know, maybe 38, 40 days at this point. Me. So yeah, I was flung into the fire, right? And I can tell you, we were extremely successful throughout that peak. I did have a lot of support from my operations managers on the outbound side and the inbound side, and my AGM at that time was very helpful to me, very patient with explaining a lot of different processes to me and making sure that I had all the support I needed to ensure that we had a successful peak. I was in that role for about 2.5 years as transportation supervisor. So over that time, I came to know a lot of different carriers, a lot of different processes and procedures from the warehousing perspective. Technology wise, I learned, you know, warehouse management software, Manhattan Associates. I learned how to implement new processes, implement standard operating procedures or SOPs. I learned and perfected yard management software, or YMS, which our WMS was integrated with the YMS system. We always had challenges with yard management, although we had this grade A, top of the art YMS system, which we'll talk about in a lot of my videos, why trailers get lost on yards and why customers tell you X, Y, Z. Although we had this grade A system, we still had challenges with our yard audit, right? So that was just my experience, you know, coming into the business. Was in the role for about 2.5 years, doing fairly well. The transportation manager role was open for about 6 months, and I applied multiple times, and each time that I applied, I was denied. I was told several different reasons. First time, it was 3 times. First time, it was because you're not ready. We don't think that, you know, you need a little bit more growth, a little bit more development. And I'm sitting here like, bruh, I just ran peak. Like, what you saying? Like, I can run this damn building from the front to the back, right? Like, I'm doing inbound, I'm doing outbound, I'm still doing vendor compliance, I'm still helping the hospital. I'm helping inventory. I'm kind of like all over the place, right? I'm helping everybody and doing my position, right? And I have a large team, a fairly large team, because at this point I now have the inbound office and the outbound office associates, right? And some of the bulk building associates, because we didn't have a supervisor enrolled at that time for the bulk building. So I'm like, oh my goodness, like, huh? Like, what are you saying? So eventually, I interviewed a second time, and no. Second time, no. And then the third time, I thought, oh yeah, when they bring me in this time, they're going to tell me, oh, I got the role. No, they actually brought me in to tell me in the interview that, oh, they thought the best of me, and I worked really hard. And I remember my director of trans at the time. He's no longer with the company anymore, but I remember him. And if you see this video, I'm going to say this to you. You said, and I quote, "It's not the person who works the hardest that gets the promotion, it's the person who delivers the results." Okay? And so he brought in someone who delivered the results. Well, guess who results he was delivering? This guy, right? All right. So I was not selected for the promotion, and they brought in a manager or someone who was supposedly experienced in the business for some time, and he was a douche bag. Okay, he was a mess, right? He had a problem with women. He had a problem with learning the business. He didn't even know what a scat code was. Like, he didn't know how to close out trailers. He didn't understand WMS. I mean, he was just like all over the place. But anyway, that was my manager. I respected his role, and I did my best to support him. However, the more I supported him, the more he dumped on me, right? And so it got to a point where our heads butted. And when they butted, baby, I let go. I let go everything. And I was everything but, I call him everything but a child of God, okay? And so at that point, I had told God, like, listen, this is too much. My work-life balance is way too much, because at this point, even though there was a manager in place, I was still very much the manager. Still working 17-hour days, coming in at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, cutting trailers loose. Managers going in the reporting meetings, just acting like he's doing all this and all that, and it's me. I'm still handling carrier compliance meetings, any challenges with lost trailers, lost freight, any type of troubleshooting. I am doing it all, and he's just sitting back in his office watching soap operas on his computer. Okay, so I was like, this is not gonna be for me. All right, so I had one day, and I called one of my good girlfriends, and she was like, oh, that's it. So I had already been wanting to start my own business, because I realized that wealth is built with multiple streams of income. And so even though I had a very good job, very good benefits, I loved the company, I felt like my time was not being taken advantage of, and I was not truly going to live the life that I wanted to live and experience some of the things that I want to experience. And so at that time, I made the decision to walk away from my good cushy job, if you will. Now, I know it don't sound so cushy, but baby, I had it made. I had them put myself in a little pocket, okay? So I walked away, and that was in May of 2018, and I started my brokerage. Actually, my brokerage was established in December of 2016, and it was HD White Logistics in December of 2016. But I didn't actually go full throttle with it until May of 2018 when I walked away from my job. Talking about scary. Oh man, I was extremely scared, because I'm leaving my no. I know what, if I do this A, right, I'm going to get this B, right? But when you start in entrepreneurship, you don't know where and when your next income is going to come from. You don't know how you're going to take care of your family. You don't know when you're going to get your first customer, right? And so I walked away from what I knew. I took a risk, and I bid it on myself. And so May of 2018, I walked away, and I walked into my office. And when I say I walked into my office, I had been planning for about 6 to 8 months to leave my job, because I had been also in contact with HR, letting them know, like, listen, this guy and we button, right? You know, this is a hostile work environment. And they was like, oh, you know, everybody kind of like painted me as like the angry, jealous black woman thing, you know, like, oh, you just mad because you didn't get promoted. Okay, then let me show you something real quick. Like, Let me show you who angry, right? Let me show you, right? So I kept reporting, I kept documenting, and nothing was getting done. So I began to work my plan, and my plan was to create something for myself. So I had established an office, but I was not yet working in it full time. And so when I left in May of 2018, I walked into my office. Part of my plan when I walked into my office was to treat my office just like it was my job, okay? So I did. I reported every day at my office without any pay for the first 3-4 months from 8 to 5 p.m. I got up bright and early, took my kids to school, got breakfast, just the whole rundown, just like I would if I was reporting a big box retail, right? I created an email calendar and a schedule, and I kind of identified which customers I wanted to go after. And that was my journey for the first 3 months of my business. And within about 30-45 days, I secured my first client. And so that began my journey in freight brokerage. I'll in my next videos, I'll talk about, targeting your niche and who I was, how I got my first customer, and what that experience was like. But I just wanted to introduce myself and tell you who I am and welcome you to my page. I hope that you're going to follow me on my journey as we go along here on YouTube. Please click like, share, and subscribe. And thank you so much. Talk to you guys soon.